Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So in this episode, the blacklister they're going after is a dude named Norman Devane, who is basically this kind of sick, twisted dude who likes to basically make people sick. It's kind of his thing, that basically he can make you get in a form of cancer or whatever by just, experimenting around and doing stuff. He makes people sick, and he used to do it on a much larger scale, but now he's scaled back, and now it turns out like he got hacked. He hacked into he got a hacker to hack into this database of all these people's medical information, and he ended up finding like a certain set of subjects, all of them being kids, and it turns out there are all these kids that go to this particular boarding school. I felt so bad for that dude Theo, because he was trying to warn Howie and everything. It's like, oh, Howie actually made a friend at the school and everything, and that said friend tried to be like, yo, dude, I saw some random janitor dude take you. I was like, oh, that was interesting. I was curious where they were going to go with that, but it's like Howie's like, I can't tell anyone, because then I had to bring up the fact is I was hotboxing in my room, and the fact is I was smoking weed and everything, so he didn't want to tell any authority figure, which I wish he had, because if he had, maybe things would be different. Poor kid ended up dying because Norman ended up killing him because the dude stumbled across his lab and everything. So I also felt super bad for Howie, especially that situation of just like how grotesque that infection spreading his skin started, almost like, I don't know what you call that, boiling, but the way it was, I was like, oh, that was gnarly to look at. But it's an interesting situation, like finding out what this dude's whole deal is, because it's like, because Reddington brought it up before, like, yeah, why'd you downscale, and why because that was the whole big thing of like, why is he doing this? Why? Because some of the people he did this to, some lived, some died, some got cured. So it's like, what's this whole thing about? Well, we end up finding out, and it's so interesting when we get introduced to him. He's a bit of a germaphobe, and it's so interesting because I completely forgot about it until Reddington makes reference to it later in the episode, and I'm like, it kind of came full circle. Basically, he used to make people sick all the time, but then during a drone strike, he ended up getting infected from whatever shit he was doing, and then it kind of made him paranoid. I think it was his germophobia came afterwards, which is so ironic. You spend so much time kind of dealing almost in diseases and stuff like that, making people sick, and it took you literally getting an infection, you getting sick, to push you to be like, I gotta be a germaphobe. So I mean, I guess every bit of certain idiosyncrasies that people have, spawn from one particular thing. It's just ironic how the situation turned out. But basically, that's why he's doing all this experimenting. Basically, he's finding kids who have a genome kind of similar to his own, and he's basically trying to make them sick so that basically he can test out cures, because he's paranoid about making himself disease resistant to any disease that might exist in the world. It's so interesting. Like I said, he was so willy-nilly about testing on people, and then the moment he got infected, he got scared of no, I have to make sure that I'm protected from any disease, and that's where his germophobia came from. And we see that he has the most extreme form of it, because he's sanitizing all that stuff, washing out his eyes, soap in his mouth. It's like, the moment I saw that, I was like, now that's fucking extreme. It almost looked like his neck was a little worn out, or it looked like him been scrubbed super hard, but maybe that was, maybe I was just not, maybe I didn't see what I thought. But regardless, I was like, that's so interesting to see things kind of turn around like that, in that regard. So it's like, oh, you kind of, it doesn't make even when you understand why he did what he did, it doesn't make it any better. It's like, you're making kids sick, you piece of crap. I've been love home dude that what's his name, Stark, that Reddington is working with. Wrestler was like, you made people sick too. He's like, I would try to help people who are already dying. People who were terminal. I, in no shape or form, would have done this to kids. For a lot of people, that's crossing the lines, So, because even a lot of bad guys and criminals still have the lines that they won't cross. So it's kind of it's all this was about self-preservation, because I thought maybe it'd be some grandiose thing of oh no, I'm gonna help out other people. It's like, no, this is all about making sure he doesn't get sick. So, yeah. The grand scheme of things is kind of well, I love Reddington. Oh no, where are you going to get the cure? And it's like, bam, bam. And it's like, see, I think he looks better already. I was like, Jesus, Reddington, that line and everything. So I also love that he had pulled Wrestler over. He was like, oh, license and registration. He's like, oh, I always wanted to say that. It's like, yeah, we're taking Norman. It's like, no, you're not. It's like, yeah, we are. And so Wrestler handcuffs himself to it. And it's like, and he's like, oh, I've always wanted to say that. What? This is going to be a gas. And Reddington's just kind of like, all right, shut up and come on. I love that. Wrestler kind of getting his way in that regard. But nevertheless, it is kind of interesting because obviously this guy is connected to Katarina, but he was helping Katarina find a cure for someone else in particular is what he was doing for Katarina, which begs the question, did he find the cure for her? It's some dude, whatever the dude's name was, it's like, so whoever that is someone Reddington's looking for. It's like, okay, that's the next step is to find this guy, because this guy might be the next step to finding Katarina. But it's like, why would she go through all this to save this particular person? Is this someone that Reddington does know? Or, I'm curious about that. What that's about. Because even Reddington was like, she wouldn't care to get anybody cured. She doesn't care enough about anyone else, which is kind of harsh to say, but I guess like Reddington thought like, oh, I'm the last ties to who she was. So if she's going to screw me over, she literally has no friends or allies. But I guess even before all that, she really had no friends and allies. So it's kind of like, I guess you can even make the argument to say like, well, I guess in Reddington's eyes is like, well, she doesn't even care about her own daughter too, so I'm curious about that. Maybe that's a sad thing we end up finding about Katarina. Maybe the twisted thing will be like, she believes she has a heart when in actuality she doesn't. Maybe she ends up breaking and destroying anything that she touches. So even though as complicated as Reddington's situation is, that maybe even he's kind of a songbird compared to the craziness and chaos that Katarina could bring to Liz's life. I don't know. That's just me kind of jumping on that. But I love that Home Dude, like I said, I don't know the actor's name, but I referenced it when he popped up last season and was like, oh yeah, that's the actor who played Nathan in Person of Interest. But that dude, what was it he was recently? Oh, right. I was about to say, what did he recently pop up in? Because I was like, I knew it was something familiar. Yeah, he played Thomas Wayne in Joker. I was like, right. I was like, oh, holy crap. Because I knew I was like, there was something more recent that he did, but that's what it was. Regardless, me and my tangents. But I love the fact is that he wants to go with Reddington throughout all this because he's like, I wasn't there during Paris. And Reddington's like, no, it's good. But he's like, no, like, I should have. It's like, no, Reddington's like, even I didn't see that coming. I was so trusting and the situation played out. There's nothing we can do about it. But because of that, he wants to go with Reddington, which I love they tracked down a key figure in piecing this whole thing together. And I love that it's like, oh, they give the dude like some special salt shakers or whatever, pepper shakers or whatever the case may be. And the dude's examining his stuff and everything, and Reddington's examining the gun. He's like, oh man, this looks so great. Oh, this and that. He accidentally pulls the trigger and kills the dude. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, there's some dark comedy to that. And even Reddington's reaction, oh man, look at that. Like, I mean, that's almost like a hair trigger. And he accidentally shoots it again. And he's like, man, that guy was just asking to die. I was like, that was funny in a super, super fucked up way. I can admit that. And I love that his friend is there covered in blood. It's like, no, go pull something out the wardrobe and change or whatever. I'm like, I love, because even like the dude's like Reddington, and even Dimbay's like, Red, what are you doing? That's just that clumsy. It's like you were trying to get information out of this guy and you accidentally killed him. I didn't see that coming. That's so good. And once again, in a very, very, very fucked up way. But regardless, it's like, yeah, but even if that is the case, it's like, we might not have gotten the information we wanted, but later on he has Denbei setting up a deal that basically is like, oh, we can make a shit ton of money later on. So there's some silver lining to this, but I love the dude being like, yeah, I'm not kind of the person I once was. And he's like, I'm not like you anymore. So I guess that whole criminal aspect, it seemed, or at the very least, I'm curious what exactly he was referencing when he was saying like, oh, I'm not like you anymore. I guess for him, he's kind of slowed down when it comes to this whole criminal act, and obviously Reddington's still full speed ahead with the whole situation. So then it also turns out they're going to meet up with a source who was kind of another link for this guy to kind of help Reddington track down Katarina. and it was going to be at a wedding, which we'll tie that in soon enough. But Reddington's the one that was like, yeah, go ahead to the wedding, even though the home dude didn't, because apparently it's like his goddaughter getting married. So we'll go ahead and tie it into it. Haram, I love when it's like, oh, Liz is doing the thing of like, kind of run it, Haram, and he's about to do it, but the first thing that comes up is a picture of Miss Radcliffe, and then he's like, oh, no, something, let me fix that, and then just everyone's looking like, what the fuck, and you see Liz kind of smiling, and she hears about it from Haram later on. It's like, oh, wow. He's like, he kind of feels bad about it, because it's like, no matter what, her husband's in the condition that he's in, which makes, it's like, one, she's married, but also her husband's in the situation that he's in, and she's taking care of him, so it makes Haram feel even guiltier about what happened, which Liz is like, nah, I'm glad that you two, once again, it's for whatever reason I refer to as banging it out. I don't know why that's just kind of my go-to when it refers to sex. I don't know, I'm like, yo, they banged it out. They were like banging it out. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of that Breathe Carolina song. Maybe that's why. That might be why I say bang it out a lot, because I just really like that song. It's super catchy. Regardless, once again, bit of a tangent. But maybe that's, I love the fact is that and the fact is they had that conversation. It's like, what? Miss Radcliffe and Wrestler saying that, he's like, what? And they're having this conversation. Rom's like, I'm literally right here where you're both talking about this. It's like, oh, because Liz is thinking it's super adorable and cute, because for her, it's like, the fact of the matter is, like, hey, her husband's in a condition he's in, she probably hasn't satisfied her needs in a long time, and it's like, hey, you haven't been with anyone for a long time. It's like, you're both consenting happy adults, so it's like, Liz is happy for him, which kind of makes Ram happy, because I think he was probably afraid of being judged. But the wrestler is like, yeah, if you're going to call, you need to call her. Yes, call her and lie to her, say that you were super busy, which Liz was like, no, that's not the good part. That's no way to start off, the good part. Not the best way to start off any relationship is with a lie, which is, Liz can talk about from personal experience, because everything between her and Tom, that's, they didn't talk about that, but that's something you can kind of keep in the back of the mind, but regardless, it's like wrestlers like, no, you tell the lie to salvage an already kind of falling apart relationship, which is like, and Ron was kind of like, oh, that's weird. He was talking about something else, but he circles back. He's like, no, but like your response to what I should say in this circumstance is weird. But later on, it's like he calls her up and everything, which is like at the same time, it seems like her husband's maybe getting a massage or something, or maybe because of his condition, maybe parts of his body need to be like massaged or stretched so they don't completely atrophy or something like that. But regardless, she's like, oh, let's do this thing. Let's go to this wedding or whatever. And it's kind of something I picked up on the previous episode, where it's like, she's a bit of a thrill seeker now. I think that's going to spiral into some really interesting stuff, because I think it's all, remember the whole point about Ram is the fact is he's not feeling anything since the whole Samar situation, and feeling something, even if it's pain, it's better than feeling nothing at all. So we might be seeing a situation of she's a bit of a thrill seeker. We kind of already know that because of her whole circumstances with, what was that group that kind of put people from the episode they got introduced to? Was it like Le Fleur Dumas? Was that it? I'm blanking on it. That comes as no surprise. Regardless, those circumstances, granted she didn't show up, but the fact is she was even interested. To be fair, the argument could be it's just more so her husband was interested and she was kind of interested on some level, but obviously she didn't go. There's a thrill seeker there, and I'm thinking like we'll see more and more, because they literally crash a wedding, which is interesting because it turns out that wedding is the same wedding that Reddington's friend is going to meet up with his source, which I'm like, that's interesting. It's like you two just happen to go to that wedding. She just happens to choose the name Bloom or whatever, which, to be fair, that's a conversation Home Dude and Reddington had about the whole fact of the matter is Reddington kind of has a tendency to look at things of like, kind of like, because even he was like, oh, I've never thought of you as someone who kind of looked at things in kind of a like fate type of mood of like, oh, things happen for a reason, which is like, he's not one to always give in to fate, but it's like sometimes you just got to look at things as just kind of being fate, which is like, I guess that kind of worked out in a sense, because I guess that was just like, I'm wondering if Ms. Radcliffe has a bigger part to play in all this, or is that just part of a Rom story and it just happened to tie into everything else, or or was it just kind of fate being like, oh, Aram now has the name that Reddington was looking into, so now that's probably going to put the task force a step ahead of Reddington, because once we, take these steps forward, they'll probably figure stuff out about Katarina before, or at least steps will lead them to potentially Katarina before Reddington, and now be the confrontation that Liz will be like, whoa, wait, you're my neighbor, wait, you're my mom, wait, you're the one who kidnapped Reddington, that whole thing. So that maybe not, but it is that interesting thing of like, oh, things kind of work out a certain way and play out a certain way. Which, speaking of that, we find out with Reddington's situation, why he went to, what was it, dude's name again, Stark, went to him because obviously that's something that's been, because I keep forgetting it because it keeps disappearing. Like, it'll come up a little bit and then it'll disappear. So the fact is, Reddington's sick and he's trying to find a cure, but it turns out whatever that dude's thing is, like, it's not working. And so now it turns into a thing of like, I guess Reddington's against the clock. Either his condition, whatever it is already active, or maybe he's taking preemptive measures. Sorry, I meant to say preemptive, not preventive. Well, yeah, I mean, they're the same thing. Regardless, maybe he's taking measures ahead of time, but I'm probably thinking because of the circumstances, that's probably something happening right now that he's trying to deal with. So we'll see. But Wrestler ends up seeing Reddington's file, and for him, it's like, he says he didn't look, which I'm assuming he didn't, but it's like, it's pretty thick, so he probably kind of has an idea of like, you're probably sick, and the truth, is always a good thing, which is like, Reddington doesn't want to tell Liz because she'll worry, which even later on, Wrestler doesn't tell her either because he hears from her, like, fact that, well, for one, she doesn't want to know too much about her mom because the last time she went digging, shit went sideways, so right now things are good. She has Agnes back. She's happy. And even Wrestler's like, you haven't been happy for a long time, so I'm glad to see that it's come back. So he doesn't want to be the one to kind of take away that happiness. So he doesn't want to be the one to kind of bum her down by like, well, your grandfather's in the condition that he's in. There's this whole situation with connected to your mom. And plus Reddington might be sick, which, Reddington is never big on telling Liz the truth about anything at the right time that he should. So that's a whole thing in itself. But I'm very, very interested to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.